all the languages, the musical languages of the people involved. So, you know, it's never fixed, so it doesn't have a name. Does that make sense, Carl?
Yes, but I had a little technical difficulty, so I kind of want to start back a little bit. We include that, but I want to start back. I had a little technical difficulty, and we're going to correct it right now. David Dove, if you would share with the audience your name and background again, but this time, if you would add in years in music and then different ranges of music that you have come to love and then that you love to play.
Okay. So by years in music, you mean how many years I've been playing music?
How long have you been? I started loving music back when Casey Kasem, the American Top 40, and I used to go every Sunday and go to the radio and count them down, and I'd keep up with them. There was Leo Sayer. There was, what's the group? ABBA.
Right.
I mean, you could go, Elton John was super powerful. So give me that little bit of that background. And I cut off your introduction, so if you could introduce yourself, please, again. I'm sorry.
All right. So my name is David Dove. I'm a trombone player, and I'm a musical improviser and a composer and a facilitator of workshops and the founding director of the organization Nameless Sound, which is based here in Houston. I've been playing music since I was 11 years old on the trombone, also on the electric bass some, and messing around with other instruments too, but mainly on the trombone.
Electric bass is guitar, correct?
Electric bass guitar, yeah.
Okay, all right. As a novice of music, you know, I got to understand what you're talking about.
Well, it's not a six-string.
I don't know instrument.
It's not a six-string guitar. It's the low bass, right?
Okay.
And I mean, I've always been attracted to every kind of music, every single kind of music. So when I started playing in the school band, concert band. And when I was 13 years old, my middle school, for the first time in their school, introduced a jazz ensemble. At the time, I thought I also wanted to be in theater. So I was in music and I was also in theater. And then our band teacher said, we're starting a jazz ensemble and we need a bass player. And he got the bass out and he demonstrated the bass. And I said, I want to do that. So that's when, really, unbeknownst to me at the time, that's when my commitment to music really started, because I had to drop my other electives so I can take 2 music classes, which meant there was a whole path that I could have gone down, probably for the better, that I didn't. So I started playing electric bass in the jazz ensemble, and this was my first exposure to jazz also. And I was also playing trombone in the concert band. At the same time, this was in the early mid-'80s, I was into punk rock. And the important thing about punk rock for me at the time was that I could immediately make my own band and start writing songs and be creative. This was different than what was going on in the school concert band. You know, I was learning trombone, I was enjoying that, but I wasn't being taught how to make my own music. And so with the electric bass, learning jazz, learning the trombone, and getting together with friends in the garage, you know, I was getting sort of forming my world outlook on music. And, you know, as time went on, I'm a curious person. You know, I started getting deeper into jazz, deeper into world musics, experimental music, also art, which influences my music, films. But I'm pretty heavy into jazz, if you looked at my record collection, you would see a lot of everything in there. You'd see a lot of classical music, especially 20th century classical music. You'd see a lot of hip hop. I have a huge hip hop collection, always been a fan. So that's kind of my music background. I'm a fan and a musician.
Before I introduce our other guest, Jason Jackson, I just want to tell you a story. I took a music appreciation class now I was not a good student in high school, very smart, but didn't go to class and all that for various reasons I'll talk about another time. But I remember this, my music appreciation teacher said, Carl Alexander, whatever you make on this test, that's what you're gonna make in the class. So, you know, on the test was a little Johann Sebastian Bach, Giuseppe Verdi. My father was into opera, and my brother was into James Brown, Confunction, and more. So I had a very diverse collection. But let me say, I made 94 on the test, and that's what I got in the class. This is the Sourceseeker Hour. I'm your host, Baruti Carl Alexander. This is our 53rd episode. I'm so pleased to have our guests, Mr. David Dove and Mr. Jason Jackson. If you could introduce yourself, sir, and tell us about your background, please.
Yeah, hello, and yeah, thanks for having us, man. My name's Jason Jackson. I'm the program coordinator over at Nameless Sound, and I've been knowing Dave since I was in high school. He was my punk rock. You know, he found out he could express himself and make his own music through working with his friends and doing this kind of music, punk music. For me, I came through traditional school band programs. I started clarinet when I was in middle school. I guess I was around 11 too, when I started, you know, really finding a passion for music. I had a great teacher. I'm blanking on her name now. I hope she's doing well. But she was a clarinetist, and she kind of wanted to start a jazz band when I was about to leave middle school, and that started getting new ideas and new sounds in my head. Before that, I was in a choir program with a great band or choir director, Mr.
Soprano or alto?
Well, clarinet. It was a soprano clarinet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
I'm trying to show off a little bit. I know a little bit about music.
Yeah, man. Soprano clarinet. Alto's less common, and I still want to play a bass clarinet. Those are amazing instruments. Anyway, yeah, I was saying in elementary school, my choir director, he had me singing Afro spiritual music and some kind of blues songs back then too. So I was already kind of getting a feel for that. That's what ended up really selling me in music, was kind of soulful sounds and a sense of you know, the full experience of life through music, and not just the happy stuff, but some really sad stuff and really kind of dirty, like gritty sounds, you know, and that you might hear on these electric guitars and whatnot.
Describe, give us some artists who got these funky, gritty sounds you talk about. Give us an example, please.
Well, I mean, for saxophone, I guess, like one of the most outstanding sounds for me is Albert Ayler. He had such a blasty, unforgiving, just knock you in the head, and really he was trying to speak to your soul, and that music really, it was very spiritually uplifting. Mm-hmm.
A beautiful thing. You all both have said some very important points, and the reason music is so important is it can affect how you feel so much. I mean, it can bring a tear to your eye. You can listen to one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, and I cried at this movie 5 times. The first 5 times I saw this movie, and the theme music had a great deal to do with it. Have you ever heard the theme music of A Beautiful Mind? Movie?
Yeah, it's been a while.
If I was in a bad mood, I'd stop the show right now. I mean, golly, guys, please go listen at that music. A Beautiful Mind, starring what's his name, the gentleman that did Gladiator movie.
I'm so bad with names.
It'll come to me in a second. But the story is about John Nash, and he was you know, he was eccentric and went kind of crazy. And I have a lot of that in me, and I can understand. There's a scene that I cried at so much when he was trying to get himself together. He had went to institutions for, you know, mental health so many times, and he stayed like 8 miles from Princeton, and he would walk to the school, and you know his clothes be out of shape, and then when he got on the campus, they would laugh at him and so forth. But he was a genius, and later he won a Nobel Prize. Very powerful movie. It should have got an Academy Award, but the music was outstanding. And I would like for you all to listen to that. And my audience already knows, because I talk about Beautiful Mind all the time. It is my most favorite movie, and the music has a great deal to deal with that. This is the Sourceseeker Hour. I'm your host, Rudy Carl Alexander. We're talking about music, the new influences of music and culture. And we have two powerful guests that are going to share many things. They're going to share a video. They're going to tell us about some of the nuances of music and the different things. I have let me get it right, a trombone player, a saxophone player, correct? All right. And so we're going to talk about it. And I have been a fan of music all my life. As I was just stating, in one room we had Tchaikovsky, we had Giuseppe Verdi, we had Johann Sebastian Bach, we had Chopin, we had so many different things that we listened to. And in this room, we listen at the American Top 40. So my background goes back quite a ways. And this is the Sourceseeker Hour. And at this time, I would ask Mr. David Dove if you would share a video, and if you could give a narration, and we'll see your video, and we'll continue our conversations afterwards. Cue it, Dave.
Maybe I should give you a little context for the video, huh?
Okay, yes, go ahead.
This video does well with context.
Yes.
So Nameless Sound has a concert series that happens every week at Lawndale Art Center. I think you came around once, Carl, called They Who Sound.
Say that again.
The concert series is called They Who Sound.
Okay.
And you know, we had local musicians, regional musicians, national, international musicians who all played on this concert series. You heard 2 sets every night from different people. And it was also kind of a meeting point for people interested in the kind of music we do. Well,
was this before the pandemic?
Well, this was going on for years before the pandemic.
Okay.
And of course, the pandemic put an end to that temporarily. And so we were thinking about, how do we get this music to people in this pandemic? And a lot of people were doing online stuff, which is cool. But I wanted to think of something else besides online. I mean, we've done that. And I was thinking, you know, right now everyone's getting their groceries delivered to their house. They're getting all of the stuff they need delivered to their house, to the front porch, through Amazon. You know, we could do that with music too. So we set up a program called They Who Sound Special Delivery, and you could order a 10-minute piece of music delivered to your front lawn or your driveway, whatever is a safe 6-foot distance from you, so that you can still have a live music experience. And it was very interesting what happened. It became much more intimate, because the Jason could speak on it, in fact, a little bit more than I could, because he actually played on it and I didn't. And you'll see Jason on it. But, you know, instead of playing for an audience of 50, 20, 50, 100, 200 people, whatever it is, you're playing for an audience of 1, 2, or 3 people or something like that.
I can see so many romantic parts to that. Continue. I'm sorry. I got ideals in my head, though, sir.
I haven't heard any reports back of new romantic encounters. Of course, that would violate.
Well, I mean, I can play it for my girlfriend. I can have somebody come play for my girlfriend.
That did happen.
Okay.
So
okay.
I have a couple of videos from that. This is a 10-minute video that is just a montage of, all of it is audience captured footage. So It's a montage of clips that all was taken by audience members, and the audience members sent it to us. You want to check
Okay.
it out?
Sure, let's check it out.
All right.
Did Jason, you want to do a voiceover on it also?
I might chime in if I'm
Okay,
moved to.
feel free to, sir.
All right.
Feel free to.
Okay, let's see. I'm gonna share video, share screen.
Yes, go ahead.
There's the screen, share.
And actually, this is our first video clip, and we thank you for sharing it on the Sourceseeker Hour.
All right, you can see it. Should I hit play?
Yes, we can see it.
All right.
We can hear it. The Sourceseeker Hour, ladies and gentlemen, presents They Who Sound.
Never, never, always, always. Rustling, rustling, hustling, hustling. Never, never, always, always. Taking time, taking time, taking time, taking time, taking time, taking. Now time. Then time. When time. Suspend time. From whence from where I am to where you are, forever gliding back and forth, back and forward.
All right, all right. All right, thank you, Dave.
Of course.
So many powerful different aspects and different sounds of music, all the different sounds that music can make, the different instruments. Jason, can I get you to tell us about what we saw and the different kinds of sounds and the instruments that we heard?
Sure. What we saw were the They Who Sound special deliveries, like Dave was mentioning, and all of that music was completely improvised, as far as I know. Everybody was just coming in and making their sounds and their music on the spot, and we saw from some really talented artists, and the musicians were playing guitars, and you saw maybe a unique kind of guitar called a pedal steel guitar that you hear a lot in kind of country music and has a unique sound. You saw my wife and I, she's playing a cello, and I was playing a tenor saxophone in that instance. We saw, I believe it was that a viola or a violin?
Ryan says it's a violin, but it's actually a viola.
There you go.
It's a small viola. He says you might as well just call it a violin because it's a very small viola. That's what he says.
One says a tomato, one says a tomato. All right.
Right. Yeah.
You also got to see some cool
Go
audience
ahead.
participation happen. One of the people that me and my wife went and played for set her camera up behind her while she did some kind of free interpretive dance to it, and that was really special.
Yeah, that was just like one of the audience, the people who purchased the performance just decided to dance, which was really great.
Powerful. How has this pandemic affected you all, affected your music? How has it impacted the people that, usually come to listen to your music? Or has that been affected at all?
Well, I mean, yeah, this is why we did the special deliveries. We can't have public concerts anymore, right? So it's, people are missing having that person-to-person experience with music. It's much different than listening through speakers, like being in the room, especially with improvised music. But when the sound is actually touching your body, it's going straight from the instrument to your body. That's a very, very special experience. And then to be present as an audience member for the moment of creation is actually a participatory act. You're contributing to that moment of creation by listening and by being there also. So, we're all, as a listener and as a musician, we're all, I don't know, I don't think it's too much to say, kind of hurting from not being able to have this experience. So, like I said, a lot of musicians, they went online, which is great. But it's like, for me, I was like, we got to do something different. We have to keep that going. And in a way, the special deliveries made the music, and Jason can speak to it better than I can, because I didn't actually perform one. I received one. The special deliveries is actually a more intimate experience. So, Carl, I think that as artists, as creative people, many new forms of music, many new forms of art making, many new innovations or different ideas have come from problems. And in figuring out how to respond to a problem, we often find very interesting solutions that have their own value unto themselves. And we're what we call experimental musicians. So it's also an experiment. Hey, what happens when someone shows up and just, and plays for you on your porch, And we had a range of reactions to that, On some of these neighbors weren't too happy it was happening. On some of it, people started dancing. I think the intimacy of the experience was sometimes really wonderful for people and sometimes a little odd for people. So there's a long answer to your question, you know? That's one way it's affected it. Another way it's affected what we do is, as you know, we work with kids. And we're no longer in the room with the kids. Now we are, and it's mostly Mr. Jason, on Zoom with the kids doing music. And that's, Jason can speak more to that than I can, but that's it's a whole nother game.
And you know, everybody started. This show, as I said, is in our 53rd show, and we had stopped because of the coronavirus, and we had, you know, didn't know when we were going to go back. Then one of my guests said, well, why don't you do it virtual? I said, So that born the ideal of the Sourceseeker Hour online. Just as you got the special delivery ideal, and it's going to blossom because people need that feeling. Jason, do you want to share on the feeling of special delivery and how people feel about it and where it may go to?
Yeah, I mean, the special deliveries were just that. They were special. we we my experience is probably going to be different than any of the other artists that could tell you. I had a few special moments that we talked about the woman dancing. That was just a treat to be able to not only interact with people by, like Dave was saying, making that sound hit their body, but actually having that kind of interaction was really special. Besides applause, you know, just seeing people move again. I play with a band in Houston that had a weekly show where people were known to get up and dance. We encouraged it, and yeah, I really miss having that type of feedback, and seeing that for the special deliveries was really sweet. We had some neighbors, yeah, they complained, and even folks that would receive a second special delivery requested to meet maybe on a corner somewhere away from that neighbor. I had a neighbor of one of our hosts or whatever, one of our folks that we were playing for. He came out with a big cushion and set it in the back of his pickup truck and just watched the show himself. And so we had all kinds of reactions, and yeah, it was pretty well received, I feel. So I hope it continues well.
I see a great future. Many gentlemen have the ideal. You know, I was born on February 14th, Valentine's. I can see a beautiful serenade to my girlfriend's house or my house, and that would be a beautiful occasion. I'll talk to y'all after the show about that. But and this is the Sourceseeker Hour, and this is our 53rd episode. I'm your host, Baruti Carl Alexander, and we have the pleasure of having Mr. David Dove and Mr. Jason Jackson of Nameless Sound, and we are enjoying their enlightenment and their illumination in the area of music. And it's so interesting. Music is so powerful. No matter what genre you appreciate, music can touch your soul. And that is what we're talking about. How has having to do it, I see all the time. For instance, I saw a tribute to Bill Withers, where they were all in different cities. I assume they were in different cities. Everybody was at their computer. And one sang, another one sang, one played the instrument. How did they coordinate that? Jason, how did they coordinate that?
Well, there's a few ways. That there is some technology out that proposes that it can get rid of the lag. You would need like super internet potential. I don't even know. I don't believe it. For the most part, people are just pre-recording their stuff, and it's not unlike what you would do in a studio where the drummer might play first, and then everybody kind of puts their part on top of that, and then they compile the videos so that it, you know, looks like they're all playing together in a certain way. If they were able to pull off doing it live for real, they must have special connections with the internet lords that give you the ability to interact in real time. Because
have you seen those videos? What I'm talking about? Some of them.
Sure.
I mean, some of them are very beautiful in how they put it together. Especially the one, "Lovely Day," the "Lovely Day," the song they did that one, and I was wondering how did they do that, because they did it so beautifully. So as you were saying, Dave, there are a lot of innovations brought about by this new situation. Where do you see the potential of this new environment taking us?
This new environment, meaning the pandemic, or this
And how you have to adjust to it, yes.
Yeah. I don't know if I have that vision, you know. I'm a person that just like, I just sort of respond to situations. I'm an improviser. And I try to keep my heart in check and work from my heart, you know. And I try to play to my strengths. But I simply respond. So, you know, I don't know where this is going to take us. I know that I can be creative and I can come up with solutions to problems. And then we see where it goes.
Okay.
You know, I'm hoping we're over this pandemic pretty soon. That's what I'm hoping, you know. I'm not loving it.
I don't know about that. I really don't know about that. I think it may only come when there is a vaccine.
Yes.
And that, even when we get a vaccine, it's still going to take a while.
Indeed.
You know, just
Indeed.
we do a lot of shows on that particular subject, and that's really kind of the consensus. Jason, what do you see as the future of adjusting to this new situation of music from a musical perspective?
Well, you know, I would hope that we can get on the other side of this as quickly as possible. If anything carries over, you know, I see a lot of potential, and it's already happening. You're seeing people who are collaborating with people all over the world, and that's kind of a beautiful thing, and not something, you know, as we get experience working in this way, working with kids, which is, you know, a big thing that we do, and we've been doing it online, you know, the possibility of us being able to actually reach kids and do this kind of work with kids in another country or something like that, it could be an interesting way of expanding our outreach to places that we never dreamed of. And, you know, possibly in the live music scene, we might be able to see some of these collaborations happening on stage, you know, where, you know, and this has been happening for a long time, but now it's becoming more of a accessible or a necessity for a lot of people. So as we get back onto stages and stuff like that, we might see some great collaborations that happen through this pandemic where people just do what they did, and they have a projected image of the collaborator they've been working with in another city or who's dealing with a health issue. Who knows?
You know, let me add to that, if I might, Carl.
Yes, go ahead, Dave.
A couple of things, because one is we did an online festival where I had 5 musicians from Houston playing solos, and well, one was a duet, a mother and a daughter, and 5 musicians. We worked together with an organization in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, from Argentina, and we alternated. There were 20-minute performances, one from Houston, one from Buenos Aires, back and forth. And this is, you know, speaking to what Jason said, this is the potential of this. You know, this also opens up connections that we might not otherwise be making. These are musicians in South America who I probably never would have met if we didn't come up with an opportunity for us to share music together, because none of us have live performance opportunities. Another thing I would like to say to that is that a mentor of mine and of Jason's is a fantastic composer and philosopher and teacher named Pauline Oliveros. Pauline passed away a few years ago. Pauline was she was a visionary and a pioneer in many fields, namely a practice called deep listening. I would encourage you to look her up. Without Pauline, there would be no Nameless Sound. She really is the sort of mentor of our organization. But another thing that she was a pioneer of was telematic improvisations. So improvisations through the internet, just as we're talking, One person is in Europe, one person's in South America, one person is in the US, wherever. Now, Pauline started experimenting with this in the 80s. And she started experimenting with this a long time ago, and it became a really important part of her practice. And she was always sort of encouraging me to get more involved in her telematic performances. We presented one in Houston, and I did one. I performed on one with a trombone player in Seattle named Stuart Dempster. I was in Austin, and I was always sort of, I didn't embrace it and run with it so much, because in some ways I'm like a little behind the curve, you know, on some things, especially technological things. I don't really like run with those things as quickly as some people do. But now I know that Pauline is looking down on us and saying, I told you so. I was doing this a long time ago, and now all of you guys are doing this because you have to. And
I can see my dad looking down on me also. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
So she was way ahead. Now everyone's working like this, and she was doing it just to do it. She wasn't doing it because she had to do it. She was doing it because for her it was a new frontier. And it was a new space. You know, Pauline was a master of performing in spaces. And she could perform in she has a very famous recording in an underground cistern in Washington State that has a 40-second reverberation, where all the musicians are hearing the sound reverberate for 40 seconds. And she was a master at making sound, at finding what the acoustic qualities of a space are. So when she would talk about online performance, and people would say, oh, but it's difficult because there's a latency, a time lag. I played this, and then this guy can't respond, or we can't lock into a beat. She would say, that's just another space. It's another acoustic. She would hear it in the same way that she would hear performing in any room. That you're always playing the room. That's a phrase that musicians talk about, playing the room. You're always playing the room. And this is just another room that we're in. It's a virtual space.
She sounds like a powerful visionary.
Indeed.
Music is so powerful across the board. Now I want to talk about some of the influences that are coming from other countries. America, and I would say Great Britain, used to be the preeminent of the music world. I believe I'm correct. You know, correct me if I'm wrong. But now there's influences from Asia. I'm talking about worldwide influences. I see Asian videos. When I say Asian, I mean Korea. I mean China. They have musicians. Africa Beats has a large segment of music coming in. Other countries do too. What do you see as the new influences or the influences that are here and happening at this time?
I don't know if I would agree with you.
Okay.
About America and Great Britain being the preeminent musical places. I mean,
Used
maybe
to be.
Yeah, I don't know if I
I'm
would
saying
agree
it's
with
changing.
I don't know if I would agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it depends on what we mean by that. Maybe we're talking about a market or something, or commercial music, but African music is older
Yes.
than any music.
Yes.
Than any music in Europe.
But see, I can only go by what I have access to. So
Right.
it does have to go along the eyes of, unless somebody introduces it to me, I have to go by commercial because that's what I have access to.
I mean, African music is in the DNA of all American music. African music is the heart of all American music.
Go back to the drums and the dancing and the cymbals, the like the sticks that you play. I mean, you can have what's that called? Where they in the band and they hit that cymbal, isn't it?
A cymbal, okay.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I can't profess to be an expert on the subject, Carl, of African music or whatever, but I do know African music and African culture, and not just music, are much older than European culture.
Now,
and
as
music.
one that has been to Tanzania, I
You should
see
tell us about it.
Huh?
You tell us about it, man.
I've been to Tanzania, and on their wall, they have African symbols. Marvin Gaye is on their wall. I didn't see any African musicians in Arusha, Tanzania. I saw Obama, I saw Marvin Gaye, I saw Tupac. So that's what I saw in Arusha, Tanzania. Greater Arusha is 1 million people. So that influence is over there. And I hear the same stories from other African cities. So when I say we have a great influence on the world,
Sure.
but now they are having influence over here also.
Well, it's a
And
global
I see
culture.
a lot.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
It's a global culture that we live in now, right? I mean, now it's a global exchange. So there's something you can say that, yeah, African music is at the heart of all American music and so much world music. But yeah, you're right. It bounces back too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
And I want to go back to this day. Nameless Sound, what that engenders to me is, okay, no matter what language you speak, music is your language. And we are connected by music. We can be connected by music no matter if you speak Spanish, you speak French, you speak Swahili, we can hear that music and be moved by it. That's what I get.
This is true, and I'm going to run with the language analogy and use the language metaphor.
I did.
And I'm going to use it even in a different way than that. And that's to say that, and I agree with you what you're saying there, but I would also say another way of seeing music as a language is to say that, well, in our music, the kind of music that Jason and I play, improvised music, each of us develops our own language. So I may play trombone, but I play trombone with my own trombone language that might be different than another trombone player's trombone language. And Jason plays saxophone with his own saxophone language. And, you know, if I were to be in an orchestra, I would need to know what the rules of that idiom are, right? I would need to know how to read the music. I would need to know how to blend with my section. I would need to know how to follow the conductor. If I were to play in a jazz ensemble, I would need to know how to improvise over chord changes. I would need to know how to swing. I would need to know all the popular songbook standards. And any kind of music like that, you need to learn that language. You need to learn the jazz language, the classical language, might be West African drumming language. But Carl, in our kind of music, we each play our own language. So someone with a jazz background might play with someone who knows nothing about jazz. And someone with a classical music background might play with someone who is totally self-taught as a musician. And what brings them together is listening. Is that in the kind of music we do is that you have to listen on a very deep level. You have to bring empathy to it. You have to communicate. And it's a kind of music where we can all speak our own language and still understand each other. And perhaps one day we will be able to do that with spoken language too, where we can all speak our own language and understand each other, much as we do in music through listening and empathy. Sorry, I just wanted to finish that point, Carl.
That's fine. I feel all of that in the name of Nameless Sound and the correlation. Jason, can you share about the new influences of music and some of the background we were talking about?
Sure. I recently got an instrument. Oh, let's see. We started working with a group of adults that are they really wanted to do hip hop, and we couldn't do that justice without getting some. I see my camera got out of focus, but we couldn't really do that justice until we got some proper equipment, and we ended up getting one of these for the kids. This is a kind of a drum pad, and learning how to play this, there ain't anything like it in the world as far as musical instruments. It is such a new type of technology, and I think.
Can you give us a little bit of it?
Well, I mean, I'd have to plug it in, but I mean, basically, I plug it into a tablet.
Well, maybe next time.
I think I can give you a quick demo.
Okay, yes, sir.
It interacts with a computer, so this doesn't make sound by itself. You have to plug it into some type of interface. So I'll use a tablet, and
Okay.
and I queued up some sounds. I got a kid. He's on the autistic spectrum, and he is fascinated with animals. And so I got a patch on here just to show you how it is its own type of instrument for real. Like, let's see.
And you know my background in
Yeah, right here. We're making music. I took a bunch of clips of animal sounds, and I made a new instrument for him. You can't do this with a saxophone. You can't do this with any other thing. So as far as like new potentialities, there's really not much. Some people would argue that there's nothing new in music. It's all remixing of the same stuff. But when you start adding new technology, and I think Pauline was on it right there with all of her stuff that she would do, incorporating new technologies. This is potential like completely different branch of music making. That animal sounds, you know, and people use that for hip hop too. They can make beats with it by sampling different artists and remixing it and to make it their own. I think that was the main way people, like in very early hip hop, taking small sections of an album and just kind of doing that one really ridiculous James Brown beat. And you got that, give the drummer some. They would take those little pieces and rap over it. You know, like I think these innovations like happening, it's all about finding a new instrument. Like who would have thought a turntable as something to make music with, you know?
Yeah, the scratch. Yeah.
Well, this goes full circle to something that we were talking about before. And that's how new innovations and new art forms come out of problems or the lacking of something. So my understanding, I'm a fan of the music. I'm not an expert, so, you know, but my understanding of the formation of hip hop, and, you know, hip hop is now global music. It is like global, dominantly, it's a culture, you know, it's global culture, is that hip hop grew in the South Bronx in New York City out of the condition of which the music programs were taken out of schools. So these were young kids who were not learning how to play instruments and stuff, you know, and this is a simplification, of course, you know, and I can't speak for anyone else's story, but this is one way that story is told, that, you know, this is the period of time where music programs were taken out of the schools and people didn't have resources to make music, and they made music. All of a sudden DJs started making music, right? There was a new form of music made out of the resources that were available, and new skill sets were developed from it. New virtuosities were developed, and new instruments were developed for it eventually, once it started being lucrative to do so, of course.
Yes, but it started in a very, I mean, on the streets it was populist, but as far as being accepted in general culture, it took a while. Right. The first artist, even before the Sugar Hill Gang, Gil Scott-Heron was out there, and so many different people. And then the Sugar Hill Gang was able to find a catchy beat, and then people like Melly Mel and Grandmaster Flash, they added in more of a street culture to it. And then people were able to take it in different directions. Like Young MC was able to take it to a bouncy kind of hip hop kind of way. Then Heavy D had a jovial but jamming kind of way. So there's so many different aspects, and some of the artists, it presented a whole new area that they may not have been able to come to before, not being singers, not necessarily being musicians, but they could write rhymes. Right. And they could speak those rhymes. And then they were able to collaborate with some other people to be able to make a whole album and a whole presentation, and there's a whole industry right there. Let's talk about some of, across the board, across genres, some of your favorite artists. You know, like one of my favorite artists, or one of my favorite songs is Huncho and Lefty. Have you all ever heard that?
Of course.
I mean, just the way the whole story is put together. And then, you know, I mean, see, music can do that. You can tell a story. I mean, you go back to Horse with No Name. America, Horse with No Name. You go back, of course, you look at Michael Jackson Earth Song. Look at the story he's saying. I mean, of course, he got attacked for it in so many different ways, but it shows the power of music and what it can accomplish. That was the #1 song in England, and I think it's still the #1 song of all time, Earth Song. So talk about some of your favorite artists and their impact. Stevie Wonder, for me, is one of the most powerful artists. Can you, Jason, talk about some of your favorite artists? We'll come back to you, Dave.
Well, you mentioned somebody, music that made you cry earlier from the Beautiful Mind movie. When you were talking about that, it reminded me of one of the artists that really got me. I don't know. She just freaks me out. She's so good, and I found a record of hers in a collection that I inherited from my uncle when he passed away. It was some of the first music I had, and it was a record of Mahalia Jackson. And the song of hers that makes me cry, and you should check it out if you haven't heard it recently, is "Move On Up a Little Higher."
I'm writing it down.
She has a way of building that up and building it up. And there's this moment where she's talking about, you know, what she's going to do when she gets to heaven, and what she's going to see. And there's this moment where she's saying that, you know, whenever you see people, it's always going to be howdy, howdy, and never goodbye. And there's something so sweet and beautiful about that.
And her voice goes to such an octave that you say, woo!
The thing that astounds me about her playing is something that I strive for, is that she was such a dynamic singer. She could sing so quietly and so, you know, it was so smooth and subtle. And then she would hit you with this, you know, deep belly, and she could go from almost nothing to the loudest sound she could make. And it was so smooth and effortless, and it wasn't just technically astounding. It was also just musically different and powerful. Just the way that she could, you know, tease an emotion, you know, and slam an emotion in one breath.
And so many artists have that ability. You know, I like a song like even Bonnie Raitt, "Nick of Time," and the way she puts that together. And Jennifer Hudson and some of the octaves that she's able to get to. I hope I'm saying that right. But music is super strong in its impact. We are close to the end of our show now. Jason, if you would give a final statement and how people can reach you, and if they want to talk music in an area that's comfortable for them, comfortable for you, you can share it for us.
Yeah, I guess first y'all should look up Nameless Sound. That's the organization Dave and I work for. You can find contact information for both he and I on that website. An easy way to find me too is through jason@namelesssound.org. That's my my email address. If anybody's interested in what we've been talking about, or would like to know how they could get involved in either working with learning how to make music in a creative new way and learn about improvisation, they can contact us about that. And you know, we're also working with kids, and if they have kids or know of some families that might be interested in getting their kids into some music program that's not your run-of-the-mill type of music program, but one that's really about creativity and nurturing that in their child, that's what we're about. So yeah, find us on namelesssound.org.
Give me 2 artists that the audience should look up. I think you gave me 1, but I give you the opportunity to give us 2 if you would like to. Give us 2 artists. I'm gonna go and look them up after we get off the show, and our audience will too. So give us 2 artists we should look up.
Well, you should look up David Dove. He's got some great records and songs and music.
Okay.
And one of the bands that I work with is you know, why not promote yourself, right? Is a band called the Young Mothers.
The Young Mothers.
Yeah, it's named after a program that Row Houses, Project Row Houses, was doing, helping young mothers get on their feet. And our bass player was in a relationship with somebody that worked with that program, and so moved by that, and not necessarily the music is reflecting that, but it's some really special music from, like Dave was saying, people coming from all different types of musical backgrounds coming together and making some really powerful music together, and it's a really good example of that. I think it's a really awesome music. So the Young Mothers is another group they could check out.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining us on the Sourceseeker Hour. Mr. Dave,
Yes, sir.
give us your final statement, how people can reach you, and 2 artists you want us to look up, and take us out for our ending of the show, please.
Well, David Dove, david.dove@namelesssound.org. Or you can find me on the website, namelesssound.org. Please get in touch. Maybe you want to order a special delivery, Carl.
Yes. Yes.
and you know, the artists I was going to mention are probably ones you're already familiar with. So maybe, you know, I'll tell you my favorite artists in a number of genres. I'll pick one from like 4 or 5 genres. How's that sound?
Sound good.
Okay. My favorite artist of all time is Duke Ellington.
The Dukester.
Especially the band of all of his music, but the band of the early 40s and the late 30s with the Blanton Webster Band, with Jimmy Blanton, Ben Webster. In hip hop, my favorite artists are Public Enemy and DJ Screw. In country,
Powerful.
In country, my favorite artist is Willie Nelson. In modern classical, my 2 favorite are Olivier Messiaen, French composer, and Morton Feldman, and an experimental Pauline Oliveros.
Very powerful. This is the Sourceseeker Hour, ladies and gentlemen. We have had a very informative, a culturally, a cross-genre show learning about music, different aspects, how to play during a pandemic, how to connect. We're gonna have to have another show because this subject is very important. Music touches our soul. It can make you cry, it can make you laugh, it can get you fired up. You can be feeling down and you can play a song that, I just listened to a song, Staying Alive, the other day, and they had it on during our seminar. I was up there, staying alive, and you can do all of that with music. It's powerful, and it brings people together. This is the Sourceseeker Hour. This is our 53rd episode. We're gonna have another show next week, and we're gonna continue in the series of music. This is our 4th show. Soon we will have our 5th show, and we'll have some exciting musical things to talk about. You know, the Sourceseeker Hour, we talk about all the things happening in the world. We talk about the protests. We talk about COVID-19. We even talk politics a little bit. So we have so many things we talk about, and next week will be our 54th show. We thank again our guests, David Dove and Jason Jackson of Nameless Sound. Check them out, listen to them, and join us here next week on the Sourceseeker Hour. I'm Baruti Alexander. Thank you. Have a good day.